Hello and welcome back. I'm here today with Penny Pritchard, who's a senior lecturer in English literature at the Humanities Department. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for speaking to us today.
Pleasure.
Do you want to tell us a bit about your background, first of all, and how you came to the University of Hertfordshire?
Came to Hertfordshire. Well, I did my undergraduate degree in the relatively normal way, but then when I finished those studies, I didn't come straight into academia by any stretch of the imagination. I couldn't actually get far enough away from university when I first finished my BA in English Literature and Language. So I worked in marketing and publishing, PR, all those sorts of different things that one might possibly do with a degree. Enjoyed them all, but wasn't really fired up. Ended up through various things happening, doing a bit of teaching at a local FE college in GCSE and A-levels, sort of evening classes with students. And the light bulb went on, and I thought, I love teaching, this is it, this is my life, Went back to university because I decided I wanted to teach at university level and therefore would need a PhD, and did the MA and the PhD and finished the PhD in 2005 or 6. And I've been working here at Hertfordshire ever since. Literally finished doctorate and started working here in the same set of months. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So 10 years ago.
Yeah. So what's your broad area? I mean, did it follow up from your PhD, the research you're interested in now? Or
yeah, I would say it did start definitely from as early as the doctorate. It was my doctorate was on Daniel Defoe, and I was looking specifically at his writing before Robinson Crusoe, so before 1719. There were various things, journalism, political treatises, religious writing, all sorts of different bits and pieces. And I was interested in the sort of the voice that Defoe articulates in those texts versus what is beginning to emerge with those early novels after the sort of 1720s and on into the 18th century. So it began with that, but looking at the contemporaries of Defoe who were other, like him, Presbyterians, particularly ministers, I started looking, and this is very exciting, I started looking not only at sermons, but at funeral sermons, okay? And don't ask me how I ended up with a doctorate in Daniel Defoe, but also about half of it was on funeral sermons, and I'm now a bit of an expert on funeral sermons from the 17th and 18th century. It's very rock and roll. And really my research is still in those two areas. So I work on Defoe, and I write on Defoe, and blah, 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 publish on Defoe, but I also work on funeral sermons a lot.
Okay. So what's the project you're working on at the moment? You want to tell us a bit more about that?
I will. Actually, I'm quite excited about this because as well as funeral sermons from the 17th and 18th century, I had this thought that, in terms of research should be relevant to people, not just in the sort of, the academic ivory tower, but should be relevant to everybody in the whole world. How do you make 17th century funeral sermons exciting for people, normal people? Yeah. And I thought, you know what, I've got an idea. What I love about these old funeral sermons, which were published in huge amounts, which were hugely popular things, would get 20 editions. I know, it's mad, isn't it? The thing I loved about them is that people would use, therefore, the platform of someone's death. The minister would often use that as an opportunity to really talk about other things. So these give you a really powerful snapshot of what's going on at that time, culturally, politically, all sorts of other things. So that's what I loved about those funeral sermons. And I thought, hold on a minute, what can we do with the modern world? And we still have funerals, people die. Therefore, what can we do with looking at a modern context? And I started thinking about, well, actually the terrible, but unfortunately increasing prevalence of high profile deaths that get a lot of media coverage, particularly in terms of the internet. And there is usually some sort of a service, whether it's a Christian funeral or it might be another religion, it might be a different sort of a priest presiding over a ceremony with regards to the death of somebody. And specifically, I started Googling and looking around and thinking about the violent deaths through terrorism and major events that have happened that you see being so much on the news and elsewhere nowadays. You may recall a few years ago, there was a soldier who was very violently attacked and killed in the streets of Woolwich called Lee Rigby. I was fortunate enough to interview the minister who gave his funeral sermon, who is herself a military chaplain. And she had a lot to say about the pressure she was under as a minister in terms of the fact that suddenly the world's press is looking at her, and her sermon is still, to some extent, the focus of that kind of media attention. So you can see the link with the old stuff I used to do, but this is you can't get much more, modern day than this. So now this is what I'm doing. I'm expanding this. I'm looking at interviewing and doing research into how ministers and priests and other people who are are involved with ceremonies surrounding funeral sermons, how they deal with this media, sort of attention they suddenly find themselves thrust into. To what extent are they actually trained to deal with that? When every word that comes out of their mouth is being listened to by the press, where they have to deal with the fact that a lot of what they say is going to be edited, and that stuff like sound bites and all those things are going to become part of what they have to deal with, you see. So now I'm working on this research, and I think it's going to be leading into a radio program, and there's a lot of like really exciting people I'm meeting in relation to that, quite high up in various religious institutions across the land.
Yeah. Well, excellent. I mean, thanks for sharing it. It's a fascinating project also for, it's very contemporary, it's kind of appeals to wider mind.
Yeah.
Also shows a big interdisciplinary approach, isn't it?
Which is what I love about it.
Goes into so many areas. And last but not least, it kind of really shows how something 17th century obscure sermons can inform some really kind of cutting-edge research. So
absolutely.
thanks for sharing that.
It's my pleasure.
Looking forward to hear more about that in due course.
Thank you.
Thank you.